Hi guys, welcome to another Pilgrim car review. It's another rainy day in Singapore, but not to dampen the spirits, we actually have a wonderful review for you today, and that is the review of the new Polestar 2 Long Range Dual Motor Performance Pack. So for today's review, we are going to go through some of the exterior updates, we're going to show you inside the car, and of course we're going to go take it for a drive. But before we do all that, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about selling your car or consigning it for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below, because through that link we will be able to help you to do all that. And if you're looking for insurance renewal quote on your car as well, you can also follow another link in the description box below, and it's free to inquire. So if you're in need of those services, be sure to check out the description box. And with that, let's get on with the review. Alright, so to kickstart the review, this is the exterior of the Polestar 2 Long Range Dual Motor Performance Pack, and there are some updates to the exterior, although they are very subtle changes. So generally speaking, the overall footprint silhouette of the car is still the same. There are not too many changes here, but the main difference is actually in the front fascia. So in the previous version, there used to be a sort of a grille, what they call a smart grille, and this has actually been updated to something called the Smart Zone. So what you see here is of course your mid-range radar and your front camera. And the reason that Polestar have done this is to actually update the design so that it's more in line with the Polestar 3 that will be coming out in the foreseeable future, which actually features this same Smart Zone as well. So it's kind of like a revamp to keep the styling in line with the rest of the range when the Polestar 3 eventually does come out. Now, being the performance pack, there are some differences to the regular car. So first and foremost, you've got larger wheels, you've got 20-inch wheels right here, and you've got these gold-coloured Brembo 6-pot brake calipers that are also fitted to the car. I believe they are probably, I'm not sure if the brake discs are larger, but the calipers are definitely different. And you've got this gold-coloured wheel cap as well, the valve cover. Aside from that, as you can see, in typical Polestar styling, the car looks very neat, very sleek, very avant-garde. And if you go down to the side here, so Polestar 2, it now says 82 kilowatt hours, which basically indicates that with the new battery pack, the car has an enhanced battery pack of about 4 kilowatt hours, giving it a little bit more range. In fact, the range has gone up to about 568 kilometers on a single charge. In real world, you should be getting at least 450. So all that is very impressive because that just makes it more usable, less downtime, and I think a little bit more easy for the consumer. There's a plane flying up overhead now, so we're just going to pause a little bit and wait for the plane to fly by. But in the meantime, you can just sort of admire the car and take a look at the exterior. I'm going to do a bit of a walk around here. So in terms of the overall shape of the car, it's sort of styled like a sedan, but it's also a little bit jacked up, as you can see from the wheel gap over here. So I think this car sort of brings new meaning to the term crossover, because it's sort of like a mid-range between a low-slung SUV and a sedan as well. But it does come with some of the conveniences from the... this is actually a lift back, so the boot lid actually opens up like a full lift back rather than a typical sedan. So that's a lot more convenient for people to load stuff in, because the loading aperture is quite a lot bigger. But with that, let's jump inside the car and see what the interior is like. Alright, so jumping into the car, this is the cabin of the Polestar 2. And you might have noticed that when I climbed into the car actually started on its own. So in the Polestar 2, you do not have a traditional start-stop button. The car automatically starts when the driver gets in, and it automatically shuts off the moment you get out of the car. Of course, there are some settings that if you have passengers in the car that you have to leave behind, let's say you're stopping by the side of the road to pick up something, there are some settings that you can run to keep the air conditioning running. But other than that, generally speaking, this is I'm not sure how you feel about it, but some people like this kind of thing and some people don't. I'm quite indifferent. I think it's quite okay. It does save you one step when you're getting into the car, and in a slightly abstract way, it does kind of make the car feel more premium, almost like the car is a sort of like a living thing on its own that responds to your movements. It's like autonomous, so to speak. But all that aside, I think that's a very small difference, or rather it's a very small issue. Looking around the cabin, generally you can see there is this minimalist design going on, which I think is very cool for a modern car, because in the modern age, I think a lot of the designs have become a little bit more streamlined, less is more kind of mentality, and I think I'm not opposed to that. I think clean cut designs, modern designs are very cool. Being an electric car and being Swedish in its heritage, most of the materials in the cabin are actually made from sustainable materials. So this looks like leather, but it's not really leather. It's like some sort of sustainable material. A lot of recycled materials used to make this car, but that does not mean that the car feels not like, in fact, the car feels very premium. Looking around the cabin, and if you touch and feel everything feels very, very nice. Not necessarily soft or smooth, but build quality is actually pretty decent. Not the best out there, but definitely a very premium car. In fact, one of the things I really love is, of course, this drive selector from Polestar, which has the Polestar logo embedded inside. It's one of the nicest drive selectors out there, in terms of its design. And one thing I particularly like about the cabin as well is how cocooned the driver feels. This center console is actually built pretty high up, and it sort of increases in height as it heads towards the dashboard. And I am a driver that likes to put my leg against the side of the center console, so I think this is actually really nice for me. In fact, when I'm sort of seated in my natural driving position, it's almost as if I have two armrests, where I can sort of put my arm here, and then of course my other arm is on the door armrest, and I can develop quite a comfortable driving position from this angle. Aside from that, you will see that there are the aircon vents in the center console or in the dashboard are actually put above the infotainment unit. This probably isn't the most optimal way to create airflow, but I think to some extent design does trump function in this case. Not going to complain too much about that, but I do find it a little bit difficult to get the aircon to point anywhere below my face. So if you're one of those people with like issues with dry eyes, I think you might want to maybe divert this aircon vent somewhere else and probably use this aircon vent on the right side here. Aside from that, this infotainment unit runs a dedicated OS, so it's not actually it's like a phone on its own. So you don't actually pair this, or you don't necessarily pair this with your phone. You just sort of run it as its own system, and it's got all the Google functionalities as well. So all you need to do is just sign in, and then you're on your way. The only downside is that for certain accounts, what might be a bit of a hindrance is that you might have to have dual users, one for your phone and one for the car. But aside from that, I don't think there's any much real difference in terms of the way it functions and the way you use the car. Within this infotainment unit itself, you've got of course your infotainment functions, and of course you've got your drive settings as well, which later I'll talk to you a little bit more about. Wow, I think there's like Parking SG app that's built into it. I've got some games as well. You've got YouTube built into this as well, so you can probably, so let's see how this works. So I think your kids might like this, but for today I'm just going to search for my own channel, Pilgrim, and voila, you've got YouTube available here. Let's see how it looks. So pretty cool. It does have an additional feel, or it does give you a different vibe when you're listening to the audio on a sort of a surround sound system. And this is running a Harmon Kardon system, by the way, so pretty decent system. Not the best on the market, but a very upmarket one nonetheless. So that's pretty cool. On that note, while we're watching our YouTube channel, if you haven't already subscribed, please give our channel a subscribe, because we've got new reviews coming out every week, so it'll be wonderful if you can join us for them. But let me turn this off and talk about the rest of the car. Okay. So generally speaking, then, if you look at the driver's display, this is fully digital, and Polestar have developed a interface that's actually really neat. There's actually not too much info on this. So you've got your drive selection, and once you put it into drive, more information comes out. But basically what you have is your speed, your map, and then of course your charging or your power, your power gauges, so to speak. And everything is very neat. It's got this matte finish to it, which is, I think, very modern and in line with the rest of the car. I like it. I think it looks super cool. And I think most people should enjoy this sort of design as well, because it does look a little bit differentiated from the rest of the cars that you find on the market today. Now, being the performance pack car, this particular car comes with something that I really love. It's a bit of a novelty, but the seat belts are golden as well, so I think that is really cool. And a little bit of a fun fact, because for those of you who don't know that Polestar and Volvo are related, they actually are sort of related. And for those of you who don't know this as well, a little bit of fun fact: the seat belt was actually invented by Volvo, and as a sort of homage to this invention, the seatbelt buckle actually says since 1959. So a little bit of a little nugget of information that's found in the car that I think is pretty cool. But anyway, enough about the cabin. Let's jump into the back of the car and see what this car feels like in the rear, because after all, this is a 4-door sort of a sedan crossover, and it's going to be used as a family car for most people. So let's see how it functions as a family car. Alright, so jumping into the back of the Polestar 2, one of the first things that you realize is how amazing this full glass panoramic roof is. It is heavily tinted, so on a sunny day you're not going to feel too warm. And actually, there is sort of a Polestar logo hologram that you can see from the back very clearly here. And I'm not sure what the full function of it is, but from a branding perspective, that's really cool. It feels like I'm following a North Star in a little bit of a weird way. But in any case, this is the cabin. Nice panoramic roof, so I think your passengers are going to feel really nice and comfortable when they're seated in the back of this car. And talking about comfort, this driver's seat is actually my regular seating position. I'm 175 meters tall, and this is the amount of headroom that I have. The seats are a little bit upright, and headroom is not super fantastic. And in fact, the side beam does protrude into your headroom a little bit. But if I take on a more regular seating position, then things become a lot more comfortable. Just now I was seated in a very upright way, and actually you still got a very decent amount of leg room, so I think passengers will be quite comfortable here. And of course, you've got aircon vents in the rear. This is non-climate control condition. This doesn't have its dedicated climate control setting though, so these will follow the front settings. But what you do get, nonetheless, you get aircon vents, and these are actually really nice. They have this really nice metal finish to it. In fact, they feel even better than the ones in the front, which is kind of funny, but not the most make or break feature. Aside from that, I'm not entirely sure why, but there is a hump in the middle here, because technically this car doesn't have a drive shaft or a need for transmission, so I'm not entirely sure what is underneath this hump, but this does kind of compromise 3-person seating in the rear, because then you've got this hump to kind of get your foot over. If you compare this to other cars in the market, the Tesla Model 3 and the BYD Seal both have a rather flat floor in the rear, so that might make it a little bit more comfortable or easy for you to put 3 passengers in the rear. But for sure, this Polestar 2 feels like the most premium car to be in off the lot. So let's get back into the driver's seat, let's drive the car, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the comparisons with the other cars in this segment. Let's go. Alright guys, so back in the front seat of the Polestar 2 Long Range Dual Motor Performance Pack. Alright, and in a bit we're going to go for a drive, but before we go for a drive, let's get some base specifications out of the way. So as shared with you earlier, the Long Range Dual Motor Performance Pack in this version has received a new battery pack. So it's now larger, it's now 82 kilowatt hours, and that means it has a longer range, up to 568 kilometers on paper. And with this battery pack, the Polestar 2 is actually capable of producing almost 500 horsepower, so about 470-ish, which is actually a little bit less than what you would get on say a Model 3, the higher spec car, and of course the BYD Seal Performance, which are, I think, more or less you could classify them as in the same segment. But in any case, this will get the Polestar 2 Long Range Dual Motor from 0 to 100 in about 4.2 seconds. So actually not very far from the competition, despite having a little bit less horsepower. In fact, I've heard that some people have achieved performance figures that are quite similar, or actually even possibly breaking the 4-second barrier. So of course it's a wet day today, so unfortunately we're not going to try that out. But I think it's absolutely possible for this car to be higher or quicker than 4.2 seconds, because generally speaking, manufacturers specs are, you know, usually a little bit conservative. So in the real world, under the right conditions, definitely the performance could be a little bit better. But one of the key things that I must say is very noticeable in this updated variant is that the ride comfort is actually quite a bit more comfortable. Now, the previous car and this car actually have the same suspension setup, so they are actually, the performance pack is actually fitted with Ohlins adjustable suspension. So these are not adaptive. You can't automatically toggle them in your infotainment unit or in your car settings, but they are adjustable manually. So I mean, it's not meant for you to adjust on a day-to-day basis. It's just meant for you to adjust once to your liking, and then left alone, so to speak, or until the next major change in driving condition that you're going to experience. But generally speaking, the Ohlins suspension allows you up to maybe 20 different settings for dampening. And in the previous car, the dampening was actually set up a lot for performance, which is of course a good thing. But what happens is that in Singapore, with our uneven road surfaces, and a lot of our roads are undergoing renovation or construction, so what you do get is that the ride quality was a bit skittish over those uneven surfaces, or over roadworks or patchy roads. Currently in this test car, the car has actually been dialed down. The suspension has actually been made to be a little bit more comfortable. And I must say that immediately when you get into the car, when you're driving around town, city speeds, there is a huge difference. The car is a lot more comfortable. So I think for people who were previously kind of worried that the Polestar 2 was a tad uncomfortable, you might want to relook this, because the suspension setup in this current setting is actually pretty nice. Of course, there is definitely going to be a compromise in terms of the way it behaves under pressure. And what do I mean? So if you are accelerating very hard in this car, and it is quite a powerful car, you do get the car squatting a little bit before it launches off. And similarly, when you're braking very hard, you do feel the car lunge a little bit. But you're not going to be driving around like that every single day. The truth is, most of the time you're going to be driving around in a very normal, very civilian way. And why would you want to be uncomfortable for most of the time and then, you know, only utilize that increased suspension stiffness on rare occasion? It might as well be the other way around, where generally speaking, you set up the car for comfort on a day-to-day basis, and then when you need to, then you stiffen it up. You bring it into the workshop, you bring it to Polestar, and you get it stiffened up. And even in its most comfortable settings, the car still handles quite well. I'm going around bends here at about 60-70 kilometers per hour, and I don't feel any body roll. It's quite a pleasant experience actually. And combined with the fact that the ride is not as harsh, I would say that I am generally having a more pleasant time driving this car than the previous edition. And I think the rear passengers also feel it quite a lot, or rather the rear passengers did feel the harshness quite a bit on the old car, the predecessor of this updated model. So if you were going over humps, generally the back does kick up a little bit. I'm not sure whether this one does, because I haven't sat in the back or I haven't been driven by somebody else in this car, but judging from the way it responds on the road now, I would say it has a pretty good chance that it has improved, so to speak. Now, obviously, this is quite a powerful car, and being quite a powerful car, drive settings I think are quite critical to get right. And what do I mean? So, in a Tesla Model 3, you do not have the option of turning off one pedal drive, so to speak. So the car, even in the least lowest regenerative setting, will still pull back when you take your foot off the accelerator, which for somebody who enjoys coasting, and for somebody coming from a regular internal combustion engine car, it feels very unnatural, and I'm not really a huge fan of it. In the Polestar 2, you are allowed to turn off one pedal drive, which means it coasts like a regular car. You've got creep mode as well, so your car rolls off at car park speeds as a normal car would in first gear. So I think all that is really good. But what's also very nifty in the Polestar 2 is that it doesn't really matter what your preference is, because there is a setting that you can choose to suit your driving style. What do I mean? So under your drive settings, you've got three main things that you'll be able to adjust. One of them is of course your steering feel, and unlike most cars that offer you two settings, a lighter setting and a heavier setting, Polestar offers you three. So there's light, standard and firm, and currently I'm driving it in firm because I'm used to hydraulic steering and I like the feeling of a heavier steering wheel. But if you're the type of person that likes a feather light wheel that you can throw around town, by all means, let's try it out actually. Ooh, feather. So it becomes a lot lighter. You put it in firm, a lot stiffer. It's quite immediate actually, quite a huge difference. Obviously, when you're driving a little bit faster, you probably want the car to, or the steering to be a little bit firmer, so that it gives you a bit more of an assured feel. But you know, if you're driving around town, lower speeds, nothing wrong with turning the settings to a lighter setting so that you get a little bit more ease. Maybe possibly even drive with one hand, which I like to do. The other setting that you can change in the Polestar 2 is actually the one pedal drive. So there's off, low and standard. So obviously in standard, the regenerative braking becomes quite pronounced. So I'm going to turn it on now. So once I take my foot off the pedal, the car should slow down quite a bit. Almost to a, I believe if I let this go on, it will come to a stop. And then of course there's low setting, which pulls back a little bit, and then of course you can turn it off altogether so that it goes like a regular car. So generally speaking, quite a lot of flexibility in the Polestar 2, and I think that's one of the really cool parts about it, that that I think, you know, if you've got more than one driver in your family and each of them have a different driving preference, this could be really useful in that sense, because then you've got one car that is able to cater to a wide variety of settings. So that's cool. Generally, other than that, as an electric car, definitely very smooth, no noise. Car's really powerful as well. But as shared, I will not be pushing the car today because roads are really wet, and this amount of torque on really wet roads, not a good combination. So we're gonna be a little bit more cautious today. But before we end off the review, there's one thing that is actually quite interesting with the Polestar 2, and that is the way it splits its power between the two axles. So generally speaking, if you think of all-wheel drive vehicles, it's pretty standard to think of them as 50-50 power split, and that is the case in some of the cars out there. But in the Polestar 2, this is actually dynamic, and it does change from time to time depending on how you're driving. But as a default, the car is actually 75% rear wheel bias, and what that means is that when you are chucking the car into a corner, you don't get the traditional understeer effect that you get with all-wheel drive cars. In fact, so you know, in most regular all-wheel drive cars, when you're trying to put the car around the bend while also carrying some speed or accelerating out of a corner, you do feel that the front wheels do load up a little bit, because there is actually power being sent to the front wheel. It's not actually a dead wheel. And what happens then is that you have to kind of fight some weight on the wheel that always feels like understeer. It's not necessarily truly an understeer. The car could actually be very well in control, and you know, being all-wheel drive car, the car is definitely offering more grip than a rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive car would. But that, it's just sort of a user experience thing. I'm not such a huge fan of trekking in all-wheel drive car because of this feeling. I like rear-wheel drive cars because you get this very neutral steering feel that allows you to then get a better rotation on the car. But in the Polestar 2, I think that seems to have been corrected. In fact, you do get it doesn't really feel like an all-wheel drive car. In fact, I would say it feels a little bit more like a rear-wheel drive car than ever before, which is a huge plus point. So yes, I think that's a really cool feature on the car. Let's talk about owning this car. So obviously, when you look at the car and its performance specs, the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, who are its competitors. And I think right off the bat, many of you will be able to identify that the Polestar 2 does sort of come up against the Tesla Model 3 and the BYD Seal, which are both very good cars in their own right. And of course, the Polestar 2 brings something slightly different to the table as well. So this motorcycle doesn't want to move. Okay, anyway, of the three cars, I would say the Tesla obviously brings a lot of tech to the table, and if technology, you know, tech interfaces are your thing, and you like little bits of tech gimmick in your car, like for example the absence of signal stocks, then you know, I think the Tesla's probably the car for you, because you would probably be taken, or you would buy into some of these features. Honestly, I think the BYD Seal might be the most comfortable car of the lot so far. I think it offers a wonderful ride experience. Seats are also tremendously comfortable. But I must say that the Polestar 2 is definitely the most premium of the bunch. It feels the most premium. The way it kind of accelerates as well, that it feels it feels like a premium. It really feels like a Conti car here. Really solid feeling. I can't really put my finger on it, but the whole car just kind of feels the most well-rounded and holistic, which probably indicates its slightly higher selling price as well. And when I say slightly, please check out the dealer exactly what the prices are, because in Singapore prices change all the time, so there's really no point talking about price, because by the time you see this review, the price could be something completely different from what it was when I shot this video. But in any case, just, you know, generally speaking, the Polestar 2 long range dual motor performance pack is a little bit more expensive than the BYD CU Performance and the Tesla Model 3 long range dual motor variant. So that's definitely that should definitely be part of your considerations. But at the same time, this is also probably the most premium car, and in terms of options, I think it's also very well fitted, because in the performance pack you already have all the performance pack extras fitted to your car. So you've got your 20-inch wheels, you've got your Brembo brake calipers, you've got your adjustable Ohlins suspension, and these things cost quite a lot of money to fit aftermarket as well. So definitely, I think the fact that it's already inbuilt into the price of the car, I think that's worth some consideration. But of course, you know, if you're not the kind of person that's going to care about these things, then of course this is a cost that is not going to matter to you, or this is a value that's not going to matter to you. But either way, what I would strongly suggest is to really go and test all three cars, because to be honest, I think they all are a little bit different in their own way, and despite being segment mates, I don't think you can really compare them like for like. But if I were purchasing a car, and you know, in Singapore, cars are a little bit of a status symbol as well. If I were purchasing a car to maintain a sort of upmarket lifestyle, to exude a certain level of prestige in my day-to-day life, I think the Polestar 2 would definitely be the one that I would choose for that particular purpose. Right, so if there are any other questions that you have about the Polestar 2 long range dual motor performance pack, please put those questions in the description, not in the description box, in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer them. Generally, comments on the channel have been getting quite a lot more, so I can't really get to every single one of them all the time. But as long as your question is valid and there's an answer to it, and you're not just like flaming us mindlessly online, I think I'll get a reply to you in a short amount of time. And of course, if you have found this review useful in any way, shape or form, be sure to give this video a like, share it with your friends, and of course consider subscribing to the channel, because as I've shared with you earlier, we've got reviews coming out every single week, so it would be wonderful if you could join us for those videos. In fact, in 2024, we are probably going to be doing quite a lot more road trips to other countries as well, to experience cars in a different setting. We'll definitely have video coverage of those drives as well, so stay tuned for those videos. Once again, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about selling your car for the best price possible, or consigning it for the best price possible, or if you are just in need of a car insurance renewal quote, check out the links in the description, because we have the relevant services to help you deal with those things. They're free to inquire, so be sure to check them out if you need our help. And with that, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.